Hey everyone, this is Cabane the Christian. Today I want to talk to you about my plans for the future of this channel. I think most of you have seen that I've been producing a lot more content than I typically produce. And I've said repeatedly, both in video and in comments, that this is something that I want to do on a very consistent basis. But of course, I've said stuff like that before. Of course, I ideally want to do stuff like this on a consistent basis. But this time it really is much more serious, and I have a much more systematic plan for the future of this channel. So I want to give you some personal background on why this is happening now, on where I am in my life, and then at the end of the video we're going to talk about some of the specifics of the kind of content that you can expect to see going forward. And I've mentioned this in various places in other of my recent videos, but I just want to put it together in all one video, so you can ask questions and talk about it in the comments if you'd like. Okay, so some personal context. So I've actually been on YouTube for a very, very long time. I've been on YouTube as a content creator since January of 2007. That is before my voice dropped, by the way, and it's a stunning thing to listen to. I won't say anything more on that point, but I've been here for a very long time. I've had some interaction with this community for a very long time, and it's had an enormous influence on my life. I doubt that without YouTube, I would have taken the intellectual and theological journey that I've taken up to this point in my life. So I owe this site a great deal. So from the time I was in my early teens, it was very clear that my interests centered in larger philosophical and theological questions. And my dad's an academic. The academic gene runs in the family, as it were. My grandfather was a medical doctor. I think he was actually a research specialist, though I couldn't tell you for certain. But it was very clear that whatever I ended up doing, I wanted it to have something to do with theology, something to do with the bigger questions. And the approach that I assumed I would take is the standard academic approach. That's the most natural one. It's what most people would recommend. And so that's the path that I took. So I got my bachelor's in history from Christopher Newport University, where my dad teaches. It's a state university in Virginia. And then I did my first master's in early Christian studies at the University of Notre Dame, which is a great program because it's basically a double master's in classics, which is essentially the ancient history department, and it has classical languages involved there, and theology. So I got to interact with a wide variety of people, and Notre Dame has a fantastic theology department. I got to take a couple courses with Alexis Torrance, who is an Orthodox theologian who, if you haven't read, you should definitely check him out. I met some great people there. I got a great deal out of that program. And so I applied for a series of doctoral programs after or in the semester where I was completing my master's, and unfortunately I didn't get into any doctoral programs. So I did a year where I was teaching as an adjunct professor at CNU, world history. Then I did another round of applications, and again I didn't get into a doctoral program, but I did get into a THM at Duke University. The THM is essentially a master's degree in theology for people who already have a master's degree in theology, so it's kind of like a master's plus. Unfortunately, the coronavirus pandemic intervened, so I haven't gotten out of it as much as I would have liked, but nevertheless, I've enjoyed the classes that I have taken, and it's a great thing to put on the resume. You know, whether that's a formal resume or an informal resume, it's something you can whip out and say, wow, I'm really such a smart guy. I have involved with THM from Duke University. You know, I say that tongue-in-cheek. But did another round of applications and got waitlisted to Marquette. I'd actually been waitlisted to Marquette the year before. Unfortunately, I didn't get in. You know, I've contemplated a lot in recent years just how different my perspective would be if I didn't really believe in the most literal sense that God has a purpose for everything. And so I can honestly say that I was disappointed, but it wasn't the crushing experience that many people would expect it to have been. And part of that, of course, is my bourgeoisie lifestyle. But part of it, I think, is that I really do believe in Christian claims in a very concrete, very literal sense. And at this point in my life, I simply don't have intellectual doubts about it. Now, that's not necessarily a virtue, but it's where I am, and it's a very comfortable place to be. So that's the background for kind of where I am at this point in my life. So the question is, well, what do I do now? Do I keep pushing for the academic path? Do I do something totally different? I don't want to do something totally different because I have all of my delight in theology and in these higher level questions. But it's not just in an academic sense. I get a great deal of satisfaction out of engaging other people in a productive way on these questions and helping people to see the glory of Christ in the gospel. There really isn't anything more satisfying for me than to have someone say, you played a part in bringing me back to Christ, or you really helped me out with this issue that I was despairing over. That is what I find the most fulfilling thing. There was a point in my life where I would have, the idea of being called Dr. Hamilton would have sent a thrill up my leg, and it just doesn't anymore. It's not to say that I'll never pursue that path in a formal sense, only to say that it's not at the top of my list in the way that it once was, or at least it's not at the top of my list for the same set of reasons. So for the past several years, there have been a number of individuals who I respect a great deal and who have been encouraging me to get into the YouTube scene in a more rigorous and comprehensive way. So y'all know that this channel is quite old. It goes back to 2007, but I kind of sporadically produce videos in bursts when the inspiration strikes me, when I have an idea, or when, I'm just feeling kind of, wired about talking something out, and YouTube helps me to do that. But these individuals have encouraged me to kind of kick the game up a notch, not just doing podcasting, but really using visual aids, increasing the standard of production, which includes this microphone that I've bought. I hope you notice the difference in sound quality. And eventually, especially given kind of what's happened academically for me the past couple of years, I figured if there was any time to do it, it's at this time. But I think it was a necessary precondition of that is the curious fact to me that despite me only posting relatively sporadically, the channel has experienced really healthy growth. I think most of the growth in this channel has taken place after I stopped posting on a highly regular basis, which was way back in 2009. So now I have 4,300 something subscribers. I got 100 subscribers in the past 3 days. I think someone must have shared it on my channel online, whoever that is. I thank you. But the channel's experienced healthy growth, and so I definitely felt that there was an opportunity for me to get into this in a more serious way. So that's the seg into the discussion of monetization. So the monetization issue, it's an uncomfortable issue insofar as it's kind of a cliche that you have a Christian evangelist or whatever, or some Christian figure on television who's always saying, give my ministry X amount of money and God will pay you back tenfold. So I wanted to be as kind of straightforward with you as I possibly can about why I'm putting the emphasis that I am on monetization. My plan for the near future is to combine YouTube, by which I mean a very, very productive approach to YouTube, which includes audience engagement, which includes all the stuff I'm about to mention, which includes a very regular stream of videos, with what I hope are going to be some openings for part-time teaching work. I mentioned that I spent a year as an adjunct at CNU. For the fall, it's not looking great. For the spring, however, I think I should be able to get at least 1 or 2 courses. Combined with YouTube, that should be pretty good in terms of supporting myself on a relatively frugal budget. YouTube is an immensely satisfying endeavor for me, for reasons that I've explained. I think these are genuinely important issues, and it brings me a lot of happiness to help people work through them. But the reality on the ground is that I can't afford to invest the amount of time I want to invest into YouTube unless it is serving as a reasonable income stream in combination, by God's will, with these other opportunities, part-time teaching work, and so forth. And so essentially, the reason that I've put up Patreon, the reason I mention it in every video, is because I want to be able to invest that amount of time into my YouTube. And if people out there feel that they're getting something out of these videos, if they don't feel they're getting something out of the videos, well then, if nobody was getting anything out of it, there's no reason for me to invest time in it. And that would be feedback which, maybe would sting, but ultimately would be useful feedback. I could go do something more productive. But I do think that there are people out there who get something out of what I have to say. And so I want to use the talent that God has given me, however small or large that talent might be. And I want to do it not just as a hobby, but as something which is an increasingly central part of my life. And as time goes forward, it's not just limited to YouTube, but we take these things one day at a time. So because of the feedback that I've gotten from people talking about this or that video, or response to my question was helpful, I think I have reasonable evidence that what I have to, my, I don't know what you call it, my approach, my videos, my content, what I have to say is valuable for some people. And that's why I want to do it, in a more central way, not just as a hobby. So there are 2 ways in which right now I can monetize YouTube, and am monetizing YouTube. There's AdSense. So initially I was rejected to AdSense, and I was accepted to AdSense, in terms of the YouTube Partner Program. Right now I'm just transferring AdSense accounts which are associated with the YouTube Partner Program. So for the past 8 hours I haven't been bringing in ad revenue, but I've been pretty encouraged by the amount of ad revenue that has come in just based on the number of views I'd been getting for the past several days. It'll be remonetized relatively soon. So AdSense is a way for me to monetize it, and the upside there is that you don't actually have to cash out, and you don't have to invest anything in order to get that. Downside is, of course, if you're not using an ad blocker, you're going to see advertisements. So benefits and harms, pluses and minuses. The other way to monetize is through Patreon. A few advantages to that. Number one, it's a way of engaging with my audience. It's a way of getting a feel of how invested people are in the content that I'm producing, whether the content I'm producing has a positive response, whether people are feeling helped by it. The negative to the Patreon model is the reality of premium content. So in an ideal world, I would like to just operate on a donation model. But realistically, and this isn't a criticism of anyone who does it, when people are allocating their scarce resources, generally they're going to privilege premium content over something which is simply a donation. And that's cool, but it's just the fact on the ground. So the downside of Patreon is you have to have some kind of exclusive content which isn't given to everyone as a universal audience. So monetization, I kind of lay it on heavy, more heavily than I'm by disposition comfortable with, because if this is going to be successful going forward for more than like a couple weeks, you know, I'm 28 years old. I have to support myself in one way or another. And if YouTube is going to play the role that I'd like it to play, and if you would like it to play that role going forward, monetization is an essential part of that. So if you enjoy the content, if you like the stuff I produce, and if you're financially able, if you're like strapped for money, please don't. Seriously, do not donate. If you're tempted to donate, but you're really strapped for money, please don't do it. There are better places you can send money. But if you're all right financially, consider becoming a patron. Here's the most TBN thing I'm going to say. If 10% of my subscribers signed up to the donation tier, which is $5 a month, if 10% signed up for that, I would be totally 100% set in terms of my expenses right now, and in terms of the revenue that I could bring in from AdSense. I'd even be able to reduce the amount of ads on my videos with that degree of investment. Now, I don't expect 10% of my subscribers to become patrons, in part because I think some of the subscribers probably aren't on YouTube or aren't watching or whatever. But that's just kind of a soundbite to suggest, hey, if you want to, if you're financially in a good place, I would really appreciate it if you donated $5. But that, if you're not into it, you're not into it. That is totally cool. There are 3 tiers. There's the donation tier, $5. There's the premium tier, $10. There's the so-called elite tier, $20. And I want to make clear here that the premium and elite tier essentially differ at this moment only in terms of the amount of money that you're contributing. So my plan eventually is to have a small amount of content, which is only going to be in the elite tier, or have other benefits, which I haven't yet crystallized in my mind, only in the elite tier. But I'm not promising the moon in terms of the difference between the premium and elite tier. So if you're just interested in getting that premium content, you can subscribe at the $10 level, and that'll get you what you want. And you can, of course, choose a custom amount to donate in the Patreon system or whatever. So those are the 3 tiers. Next slide, I'm going to talk about the content, which is the actual exciting part. But before I do, please do pray for me. And that's not just some like vague Christian sign-off. I mean this very seriously. If I don't have people praying for me, and I'm thinking of putting out feelers to see if I can get certain people to commit to pray for this channel on a regular basis. We'll talk about that maybe in another video. If people don't pray for me, this channel will not survive. I won't survive, spiritually speaking. For those who are Orthodox, please write my name in the diptychs for the Sunday liturgy. Prayer really does work. I have no question, no doubt about that. Not only based on theology, but based on lots and lots of personal experience. Please pray for me. Please pray for this channel. That is more important than any donation that you could give me, and I mean that. I don't want to pray for me to become like some generic sign-off. It's a very serious request. It's the most important request I have to make in this video. Okay, so now for the actual good stuff, what you can actually expect in terms of content. So this has changed a bit for the better, I think, since I started the relaunch of my channel a few weeks ago. I found, it's easier than I expected and takes less time than I expected to produce a PowerPoint before making a video. It helps keep me on topic relative to what I'm like when I don't have a PowerPoint in front of me. So that's one way in which my plans have changed. The exclusive podcast format in terms of just audio with like an icon overlaid, that'll be rarer than I had planned, with the PowerPoint becoming more common. The amount of videos that I'm producing has gone up slightly. I'm expecting 4 to 6 videos per week, with maybe 7 videos in some weeks. That'll be divided between different kinds of videos. There's going to be shorter scripted videos, that is totally pre-typed or written. Some posts that I've already written over on my blog. And these videos are going to be unique in that they're going to have a higher production quality. So you haven't actually seen anything yet, which matches the plan here. And that's because it requires the assistance of some other folks who are going to be doing the animations for me. So they will be appropriately compensated from the Patreon funds. So this is one way to reach a broader audience with information which I think is clear. It's precise relative to the interests of the people in question. It maybe will pique a broader audience's interest in the subjects which are being discussed, and they're just more generally clickable for people who are looking for something at an introductory level. I do think that there's a place for the lengthy, in-depth discussion. I think there's a demand for that. If you're not going over anybody's head, you're going over under most people's feet. But I don't want to abandon that shorter, not kind of beginner level, not kindergarten stuff, but stuff that's more user-friendly for someone who doesn't have years experience in thinking about these questions, who doesn't know the technical terms or whatever. So there will be those. Hopefully you'll see the first one of those in the next couple weeks. The first thing you're going to see in terms of that higher production value is going to be a channel trailer, which should be this week, I think. Then we're gonna have interviews with scholars and theologians about topics and questions which I find interesting, which is essentially the only criterion, whether I find it interesting or not, and whether I think it'll be useful to put out there. Now, you guys know the sort of topic that I find interesting. So the goal is that we're going to have one of these per week. Obviously, we haven't had this so far, but what I'd like to do is get a pretty decent bench set up in terms of arranging this stuff several weeks in advance, so that I can have this pre-planned and be very consistent in delivering these interviews, one per week. They don't have to be a famous person in terms of what fame means in the academy. They can be like your weird friend who you think has this brilliantly interesting idea. As I've mentioned, I'm interviewing my brother this week on his return to Christianity. I think you're really going to enjoy that, actually. He has virtually no online presence, and so this, in a way, will be his introduction to the world of the internet, at least on these subjects. And I think you're really going to be edified and stimulated by his perspective. So I'm very excited about that. You can always recommend me people who you'd like to see interviewed. Debates. So this took a lot of convincing and prodding from other people to me. Personally, I was captain of the debate club in high school, but there's something about it which I just don't particularly like or enjoy. Something about the format which makes me nervous, which I'm just not dispositionally inclined to that kind of format, but I've been convinced it is useful. It does bring important ideas to a broader range of people, and if you're reasonably competent, it can help strengthen what I take to be important truths in the eyes of the general viewing public. So debating Muslims on topics where I have something useful to say, like Christology. We have some very early plans for getting some of those arranged. And I don't have anybody specific in mind for these other subjects, but I am open to arranging a debate or a debate/discussion with Catholics on the papacy or maybe the Filioque. I would like to have some kind of debate/discussion with Protestants on something like justification. That is one area where, for some reason, I enjoy the format a bit more when it's on questions like justification. Maybe it's just because biblical theology above all else is what makes me tick. In an ideal world, I'd love to have a debate with James White, but I've tried to flatter him for years into recognizing my existence, but all I got was a Facebook post making fun of some quotation about Pope Francis by me. So I won't give any further context to that. But I actually like the guy. I find him endearing in a weird sort of way. And I think on a number of issues he is quite intelligent and has some useful things to say, especially on the Islam issue. So I'd love to engage him on a more or less friendly level at some point in the future. But we'll see what happens. With God, all things are possible. And then, so I should mention that in terms of the interviews, the full interviews will only be available to premium Patreon subscribers, but a good portion of the interview will be available to everyone. And debate, obviously the live debate will be viewable by everybody, but in terms of the upload on my channel, other people, could record and upload it if they want. But in terms of the upload on my channel, the full debate will be viewable only by premium subscribers. So that's my plan at this point there. And then another premium feature or whatever is a monthly or bi-monthly Q&A. So this is where if you are a Patreon subscriber, you can send me a question, maybe multiple questions, but right now I'm going to keep it to one question. You can send me a question and I will guarantee you that I will write you or make a video for you with an answer if I have an answer to give. Okay, if I don't have an answer to give, I'm not giving it. But if I have something to say, I'll say it to you. It's a rock solid guarantee. The plan is to answer these questions in 1 or 2 videos produced every month, which runs through the monthly questions, if in fact people are interested enough, in my opinion, to ask me the questions, which is not a given. Or in certain cases, I might actually do kind of like a live Discord session where I can talk with people about this stuff, and then we can upload that Discord to YouTube. But the guaranteed question response is for Patreon subscribers. And this is not saying that if you're not a Patreon subscriber, I won't respond to your question in detail, or I won't respond to it with a video, because I may well do so. But the guarantee is for Patreon subscribers. And for the elite subscribers, I may increase the number of guaranteed questions to give. So, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint, monetizing guaranteed answers makes me cringe in a profound and existential sense internally. So I just wanted to put that out there. I am self-aware enough to cringe at talking about monetizing guaranteed answers, but I'm trying to figure out, I do get a lot of questions, and which means there must be some demand for it, and if there's demand for it, you can monetize it. But if you have other ideas for useful premium or elite features, I'm all ears, because I really don't want to lock a lot of like 50% of my material behind a paywall. I really don't want to do that. At the same time, I don't want to give premium subscribers nothing at all. I want to be able to provide them something. So that's where I'm at right now. I haven't slept in a little while, which is why this video is a little more rambling and monotonous than I would like it to be otherwise, but it is what it is. So that is